It's recording.
Okay. They say there's no such thing as an original idea. Well, in Meghan Markle's case, she really seems to be adopting that as her life motto. Over the past few years, I've lost count of the number of times that we've exposed her blatant plagiarism, copying, some would even say theft of other people's concepts. We already know that she is an empty vessel with a knack for copying the styles of other women and heck, sometimes even entire personalities that she tries on to see which one fits best for the day or for the hour. We know she has a knack for plagiarizing speeches, like she did with her UN speech, or plagiarizing ideas and projects like the 40 by 40 that she ripped right out of Obama's playbook. And speaking of Obama, rumor has it that her children's book, The Bench, was also a ripoff of a book that he had written called Of Thee I Sing. She's even been accused of stealing ex-boyfriend chef Corey Vitiello's recipes and claiming them as her own. Now she's gone ahead and done what I half-jokingly suggested she should do on Monday's show, and I'm by no means pretending that she took my advice in particular, it's just happenstance. But I suggested that she drop American Riviera Orchard altogether, what with the whole mouthful of saying it and the trademark issues primarily, and just go with love, Meghan. You know, some consistency with her Netflix show. It makes sense, right? Then, and this always happens to me, it's the worst luck ever, mere hours after I concluded filming, news leaked, this is before she announced it, that she did indeed change the name to As Ever. Her signature sign-off that she's been trying to make a thing on Instagram. And now we know why she's been trying to make it a thing. It was, I suppose in her mind, a clever marketing tactic, building up to the eventual announcement. Just a quick aside before we move on, why didn't she call it As Ever Meghan? I mean, it would have made a lot more sense from an intellectual property perspective, but no, she had to go for the very generic and very commonly used As Ever, which is rattling up some feathers, as we will also soon discuss today. I'm not here to dump on her choice of name, by the way. I must admit, it is better than American Riviera Orchard or Spoon Me, Fork Me. I kid you not, this is the first I'm hearing of it. But you know that era of hers where she was trying to be a sexed up, burger flipping, midriff bearing starlet? That was back in 2013 when she was 32 years old. And it turns out that one of the ideas that she had for a name for a food blog before the TIG, which came in 2014, was Spoon Me, Fork Me, as per the Daily Mail. Get a load of this. A dozen years certainly has changed Meghan. The denim phase dates back to a sex-drenched video for the magazine brand Men's Health, in which the newly minted star of TV series Suits discussed whether she would have relations outdoors. I would say yeah, she giggled, and shared her food tips. Back then, Meghan was prized for her physical perfection. It was around the same time that she first considered launching a foodie website that would help burnish her image. It was to be called Spoon Me, Fork Me, a vulgar piece of provocation which she thankfully had second thoughts about. I have no words. Remember on Monday's show when I pulled up an article from the Daily Mail about how all the local farmers around the Montecito area had no idea about anything to do with American Riviera Orchard jam or preserves or what have you? I speculated that perhaps they were bound by an NDA and they refused to give the Daily Mail what they were looking for and were therefore going to play dumb. Because the alternative meant, if they really didn't know what was going on, that Meghan, despite naming her business American Riviera Orchard, would not in fact be producing any of her products in the American Riviera, which can actually be quite problematic in a legal sense. It can be seen as misleading and deceptive conduct if you lead your customers to think that that is where the products are being made, when in fact they're being made somewhere else, sometimes even overseas because it's cheaper. Well, it looks like Miss Freakish Attention to Detail only just realized that that may actually be a problem. Hence, the name change.
Last year, I had thought, you know what, American Riviera, that sounds like such a great name. It's my neighborhood, it's a nickname for Santa Barbara, but it limited me to things that were just manufactured and grown in this area.
She announced American Riviera Orchard via that creepy, cringe-worthy Instagram reel almost a year ago now. She started making jam and dog biscuits to send to her elite circle of acquaintances. I wouldn't even call them friends. She filed a trademark application. She even made a logo. And only now or recently did she realize, oh no, I'm gonna have to source things from the American Riviera. You don't say, Sherlock. Where on earth is this woman's team? Wasn't she just humble bragging about Netflix being her business partner?
Then Netflix came on not just as my partner in the show, but as my partner in my business.
Assuming that's true, of course, because we know how Meghan loves to stretch the truth as far as it can go. But regardless, are they as inept as her? Or does she just simply not listen to anyone? Now, she says she secured the name in 2022.
I thought about it, and I've been waiting for a moment to share a name that I had secured in 2022, and this is the moment, and it's called As Ever.
I want you to put a bookmark on that because I want to follow my notes in chronological order, and that comes just very soon, but a little bit, just a tiny little bit later. I have more to comment on in her reel.
As Ever essentially means as it's always been. And if you followed me since 2014 with the TIG, you know I've always loved cooking and crafting and gardening.
I just find it so funny that she herself admits that she's come full circle. Started as a wannabe influencer, made it to the top, and now we're back.
This is what I do, and I haven't been able to share it with you in the same way for the past few years, but now I can.
I don't know if she's stuck in some time warp, but she's had half a decade to get back into her lifestyle wannabe guru roots. In fact, if she'd done that around 2020, 2021, instead of arranging an explosive and self-destructive interview with Oprah, perhaps she would be in a much better position 5 years later. But what really caught my interest was her admission, if you listen between the lines, that she basically had to rush and make this reel to outpace the leaks.
So as things are starting to trickle out there, I wanted you to hear it from me first. Of course, there will be fruit preserves. I think we're all clear at this point that jam is my jam.
Because that's how As Ever actually came to light a few days ago. Her story is that she secured the name for As Ever in 2022, and she's been sitting on it for all this time, and she's shocked she's been able to keep it a secret, thereby creating the impression that this was all in the works behind the scenes for the last 3 years. But then, of course, she contradicts herself in the reel, because that's what happens when you lie. She says herself that she realized the blunder she made when she picked the name American Riviera Orchard. That was launched last year. So it doesn't make sense. Did you establish As Ever in 2022 and have you been working on it since? Or was it a last-minute scramble because your trademark application has obviously not gone through and you realize that it was time to rebrand for the 1064th time? If you pay attention, you will see that this has fingerprints all over it of a very hasty last-minute flurry. She left Invictus early, which is not like her. Her website for As Ever was a Shopify link as of Monday, and it had an old photo which looks like it was taken on the same day that she filmed that weird Instagram reel last year announcing American Riviera Orchard. And it even said established 2024. And that website has now been replaced with the official asever.com website with a new image of her running down a field with her daughter. Which, surprise, surprise, turns out it wasn't about privacy after all. Back to that point that I told you to bookmark. Now, I don't know if she meant she secured the trademark in 2022, but an old screen grab from her website, again, this may have been from the Shopify link, I quickly screen grabbed the image when I saw it on the internet, clearly shows the trademark sign. However, if you look at the actual updated landing page now, you'll see that any references to a trademark have been removed. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is because it looks like she's gone and done it again. You will quickly see every single application in relation to Meghan's business pending. So I don't know what she was talking about when she says she secured the name in 2022. Perhaps she secured the website name, the domain name, but she certainly didn't secure the trademark. So could this be strike 3 of prematurely announcing and putting a name everywhere without knowing if you're actually going to get the trademark? Because this is a very common name and many businesses are already operating under it. Now, not all of them are trademarked, and we're going to get to that, but at least one of them is a Chinese brand called As Ever, looks like it's without a space in between, which operates in the clothing industry. And Meghan initially wanted to trademark that category, category 25, which covers clothing, and couldn't. She received a partial rejection because, As Ever, the Chinese brand, already holds a trademark in that category. Have you learned nothing from the Archetypes trademark falling through and the American Riviera Orchard trademark falling through? I've mentioned how there are other businesses that haven't trademarked the name As Ever, but have clearly been operating for years before Meghan Markle decided to use the name. I was going to mention a particular page on Instagram which had a very snarky bio where they specifically said before Meghan Markle came up with the name, but I've decided against it because it looks like they were getting a lot of hate for making light of the situation. They had to turn off their comments, and I don't want to attract more negative attention to them. But the second one is the one that has actually been grabbing more headlines and generating more interest, which is As Ever in New York City. It's been described by its founder as a small family-owned business that was founded in 2017. I visited their website as well, and they have a very limited collection of, from what I can understand, recycled vintage clothing. They've also collaborated with a brand that Meghan Markle actually used to wear a lot, especially before she met Harry, Madewell, leading some to believe that it is unlikely that Meghan had never heard of this small company. Now, unlike the other Instagram page where they were trying to make light of the situation, the original As Ever doesn't seem to be too happy about what's been going on. If you visit their Instagram page, you will be met with a very attention-grabbing exclamation point post. If you click on it, you will see that the creator has written a very lengthy post addressing the entire situation. He talks about how they are aware of what has happened and how they are not affiliated. He explains how this venture started all the way back in 2015 as a side hobby, which then blossomed into a business 2 years later. Now, you might think, well, that doesn't seem very aggressive or doesn't convey much negative feelings towards the situation. And you might be right. It's a very diplomatic response. However, if you click on their stories, I don't know if it's still going on right now, but I did grab a few screenshots. They have been sharing nonstop posts from their customers, their supporters, of how this has always been the first and the only As Ever, the OG, as it were. They've also been exponentially growing ever since Meghan's announcement. People have been flocking to their Instagram page from all corners of the globe, and they've also been purchasing their products in solidarity. Now, as per my search on the US PTO website, As Ever New York City doesn't seem to hold a trademark, at least not yet. Now, we know Meghan's not going to be able to trademark As Ever in the clothing category because of the Chinese brand. So unless she finds a workaround around that, that's not going to be a risk at all to As Ever New York City. And why is that relevant, you ask? Well, if you've watched any of my previous videos, especially this one that I'm going to link up here, then you'd know that issues arise when there is a risk of confusing or misleading customers. And that normally happens when you're operating in the same field. So if Meghan sticks to her jams and preserves and her cooking utensils and whatnot, then As Ever New York City, who solely sell clothing, would have a hard time arguing that customers are going to get confused or there is a high likelihood of confusion. So that's New York City. Now we travel all the way to Spain. We saw on the trademark website that she has her cursive As Ever logo, I suppose, filed and is pending. What we don't see is this other logo of a palm tree, just one palm tree. It's not a conjoined palm tree anymore, and 2 hummingbirds on either side. Now, initially, you might think that's completely innocuous. Apparently, the palm tree is in reference to California, and the hummingbirds, well, the Daily Mail reckons it might even be a nod to Queen Elizabeth. May she rest in peace. And they use this from Spare, where Harry talks about a hummingbird coming into the room he was in the UK when the Queen passed away. I wouldn't be surprised if this came straight out of Meghan's camp and can be used yet again as more proof that the royal family never wronged her, because she seems to insist on having symbolism representing them everywhere she goes. But I digress. This logo, which I'm sure you've seen this everywhere by now, is an identical, almost identical, I should say, rip-off of the coat of arms of a small town in Mallorca, Spain, called Poreres. According to the Mallorca Bulletin, this town has a population of under 6,000 people. That's how small it is. And apparently Meghan's already managed to piss off many of its inhabitants, including potentially its mayor. Isn't it funny? First we get Wojciech Meghan from South Africa. We get the chief of Toronto police calling out her lies. And now she's pissed off the people of Poreres. It's actually a talent of hers. The Sun was one of the first news outlets to report on this. And they actually splashed her onto the cover saying, "Duchess facing pain in Spain. Mayor in Mallorca says Meg's doing what she shouldn't oughta. Brand logo nicked off town badge." And according to the Mallorca Daily Bulletin, a Poreres council spokesperson said that they would be meeting with their legal advisors to decide whether to take any action. They are unaware how Meghan discovered their coat of arms, if she ever did. Apart from complaints from some residents, the council underlined the fantastic promotion the story was giving the area. Again, kind of in a similar vein to As Ever in New York City. Now, before we move on to an update from the mayor, I came across another interesting tidbit from the Mallorca Bulletin, which is that the town of Poreres is known for its apricots, which made me think, what if Meghan or someone from her team were Googling what the most economically advantageous locations might be for sourcing fruit for her jams and preserves? And what if Poreres came up in that otherwise innocent search? It would explain how she came across the coat of arms of a random small town of under 6,000 people. And then because it's so small and she thinks she's so big, she thought, I really like that. I think I'll claim it for my own. As for that update I just mentioned from the mayor, as per the Daily Mail, this is a coat of arms that dates back to 1370 and is a significant part of the town's cultural heritage. The mayoress told El País that although the town is not in a position to take legal action over the alleged plagiarism, they are demanding nonetheless that the logo be removed. The truth is that although this has given our once unknown town some publicity in just a few hours, we don't like our coat of arms being used. We want them to pull the logo. And she goes on to explain that to sue for plagiarism is complicated and costly, and a small town council like ours is not in a position to fight against the English crown. She's clearly confused. She thinks Meghan Markle is still part of the royal family and that the British monarchy is going to swoop down and take care of it. Honey, don't worry about it. She's on her own now. Now, what's funny is, remember how I mentioned that as I read the Mallorca Bulletin, which was a couple of days ago before filming, I mused about perhaps she came across this in her research on where to source fruit. Well, the mayor says that jam is also one of Paredes' local specialties, adding that farmers will be happy if Meghan decides to market the town's jam. That's not a bad idea. If you're going to allegedly rip off a small town's coat of arms, then perhaps you can do your bit and maybe collaborating, maybe saying that you've sourced your fruit and your ingredients from Paredes. So we know that as per Spanish law, legal action is not going to take place. I also found this tidbit, but this pertains to US law. So according to US law, a trademark can only be refused if it uses the flag or coat of arms or other insignia of the United States, state or municipality, or a foreign nation. And if you go on to read the actual subsections in more detail, you will find that this does not cover the coat of arms of municipalities in a foreign nation. So it only covers the coat of arms of the entire nation, not places like Mallorca or Paredes. So assuming she's going to submit this logo for trademarking, it probably won't be flagged as an issue, at least in terms of this whole alleged plagiarism of the coat of arms of Paredes. I mean, seriously, this is just so random. It's so random. She also has a secret talent for getting herself in hot water. All right, so we focused a lot on the legalities. And so far, the answer seems to be, assuming her application goes through, she's in the clear. But does that mean that what she did is morally correct? From a very, I suppose, objective perspective, one can argue that this happens all the time in the world of business. In fact, that's why trademarks exist, because people do operate under the same name all the time, whether it's due to sheer laziness and failing to perform their due diligence or just willfully doing it, not caring. At the end of the day, this is not a Meghan Markle specific problem. But is it actually theft? Because I'm using that in the thumbnail and in the title, whatever it ends up being, because of its prevalence. I've been seeing people accusing her of outright thievery. You can argue all day long that she could have gone with another name. And absolutely, I mean, I still think she should have gone with Love Meghan. For consistency's sake, if nothing else. Or if she really was hung up on the as ever, because Meghan just comes across like this person who just gets hung up on something and she won't let it go, then perhaps she should have gone with as ever Meghan, because then clearly her name would be present in the trademark and no one would confuse her for other businesses such as the Underdog, as ever, New York City. At the end of the day, it seems that all of the other businesses are only getting positive publicity from this. So even if Meghan was operating maliciously and deliberately didn't care that there were already pre-existing businesses operating under that name, then it's backfiring anyway because it's benefiting them and only leading to more criticism towards her. But I do want to leave the question open for you when it comes to not just the name of the business, but also the coat of arms of Paredes. In your eyes, was it just a mistake? Was it a coincidence? Or was it perhaps another classic case of good old Meghan Markle plagiarism?